Those of you who have been following the channel for a while know that I am a massive fan of Final Fantasy, specifically Final Fantasy 7 and 10, love both of them to death, but Final Fantasy 7 Remake was probably my favorite game of the last handful of years. I actually made a video about it. It was my game of the year for 2020, and I would say it is one of my favorite games probably, in the last decade, honestly. I love it to death. I think it was masterfully executed, and I'm excited to see where the games go from here. We did get massive news, actually, just yesterday when this comes out, at State of Play about the Final Fantasy franchise, specifically Final Fantasy VII as a franchise and what's going on with it. I did want to run through a few of those things, some excitements, some concerns, just from the perspective of a fan, and I hope this is interesting for you guys. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoy this, subscribe for more content, like it, I very much appreciate it, and I'd like to talk about Final Fantasy more in the future. Now, here's the thing. There were three big announcements at State of Play. One was Final Fantasy VII Remake Integral, one was Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis, and one was Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. I always forget the name of it. Now, we're going to run through each of these, but the main thing I want to talk about is some excitements and concerns about Final Fantasy VII Remake as a whole. Because Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's actually not integral, it's Integrade. I always mess that up because I always think of the Metal Gear Solid I was thinking Metal Gear Solid 1 Integral, the PC port that I played through. But it's interesting because there's a lot of new features coming to this game that are really going to, I think, improve quality of life, make it a better playing experience for everyone, and also just add to the story as a whole. So, for example, this game is now going to include on the PlayStation 5, and actually it's free if you have it on the PS4. I need to put that out there because I think a lot of people weren't understanding that information. If you own this on PS4, you can upgrade to PS5. My understanding is whether it's a disc or digital version on PS4, free upgrade to PS5. However, if you do that, there is still a piece of DLC content you will have to purchase if you want it, which we'll get into. But there will now be two different modes, performance or graphics. It can focus on running 4K graphics masterfully, and keeping the graphical mode the same and locking the frame rate, or which I assume is at 30, or you can actually focus on performance and, you aim for a lower graphical fidelity, but you're running 60 FPS at all time. This game is not a game that needs 60 FPS. I know that all my fellow PC players just cringed when they heard that. I'm with you. I understand 30 is really low, and I don't understand why that's a benchmark either, but this game was fine with 30 FPS, so it's not a big deal, but it's nice for people who wanted that extra performance and maybe don't care as much about running everything in this super solid 4K graphical mode. I also do think as well that the biggest addition that I'm super, super excited about is the photo mode. I'm a nerd for this kind of stuff. I love photo modes. I spend probably the most time in things like Arkham Knight and Spider-Man and Miles Morales on PS4 and PS5, just taking pictures and messing with the filters, doing stuff like that. I think that every modern game really should have some sort of photo mode. I was just flabbergasted that it wasn't in the original release for this, so I'm very excited to see that. I also do know that they're working hard to fix issues that the original release had. For example, graphical issues. The textures have all been updated. They're going to be even more beautiful, and it's going to have a physical edition as well on the PlayStation 5. So there's a lot there that you can kind of get into. First off, it is nice that we actually got to see a physical release of this again. So, for example, if you are a physical game collector and you would either rather get rid of your PS4 version for some reason or you just want to buy it for the first time, you can do that now on PS5 without it being digital only. That's really cool. I also do think that it's nice that you get a free upgrade, a free digital upgrade if you have the game already on PS4. That's great. That's something that more companies should be doing, I think, especially I'm surprised because it's been such a gap since release, but we're still seeing that. So that's pretty rad. I do also think that the new story content with Yuffie is much, I guess, appreciated or welcome, in my opinion, because Yuffie was noticeably absent from the original remake release. I thought it was just because, you hadn't left Midgar yet and you were going to get to her and Vincent and some of these are playable characters in the second and third parts of this game. But she's here now. If you don't want this, I guess, DLC, but you want to just upgrade to PS5 for free, I suppose you could just do that. But obviously, you could also upgrade and buy the DLC, or you could just buy the integral version and you'll have it with it. So that's pretty cool. She actually seems to have really interesting combat. I like her fighting style and everything. There are some concerns, though, that I have with these releases. One is that there is a digital deluxe version, which includes certain things that you can't get otherwise. Like, for example, the pre-order bonus for, I believe it's the normal digital version, but also digital deluxe, is a special weapon for Yuffie that it appears you can't get in the base game without doing that. I'm not sure if that's actually the case, though. Like, they said that this is a pre-order bonus, but they don't actually talk about whether or not you can get it otherwise. So I guess to me, that's a bit of a concern in terms of, like, what's going to happen with this. I don't know. You know, are you going to be able to get that weapon later without it? If you can, I didn't see it. I didn't see that you'd be able to do so. And there's a lot of, like, push in terms of why you should do these things. So, like, for example, there's a lot of push in why you should pre-order things. Like, in terms of the companies, like, a lot of the argument has always been, oh, well, you know, we want to push this digital version more because we get more money out of it than at retail. That's always been kind of a push from developers, not specifically, not specifically Square, but just developers in general. But the problem is, if that's the case, then why can't I go on the Square Enix store and buy this product right now and pre-order it and still get that extra digital, weapon? Why can't I get that? Why is that separate? That's your store. You're making much more money off that than either of them. So what's the deal with that? I guess I don't really understand this. It frustrates me very much, and I hope that this isn't something that Square Enix keeps doing. It reminds me a lot of the Demon Souls thing where they made, like, a suit of armor exclusive to the digital version, and I hate that crap. Like, if I'm buying your game, I want to get everything with it. If it's separate DLC I can buy, I understand, I'll buy it. But don't lock it behind some arbitrary crap like that. It's just stupid. I get you don't, these companies don't really want you to buy physical anymore, but then don't offer it. Don't just try and make the physical version nerfed or something. It's lame. But other than that's really my only concern with it. I do want to talk very briefly about Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. This game is odd to me and a little frustrating because this game is mobile only, at least so far. It's Android and iOS, so I suppose you could play it on an iPad or whatever you want, but it's a mobile game. This is essentially a different version of a Final Fantasy VII Remake, which includes elements of the entire compilation of Final Fantasy VII, which actually looks pretty rad. I mean, it's going to have things from Final Fantasy VII, the original. It is going to have things from Final Fantasy VII, I guess Dirge of Cerberus, all these things, Crisis Core. There were a lot of elements in there that were shown off, not just the original Final Fantasy VII. So we don't have a lot of information on that yet. It does look like it's going to be a big experience for mobile phones. But one thing does concern me about it, which is microtransactions. And it's because of this game, which is Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. Now, this game is going to be a battle royale game, basically where you play as candidates for the soldier program for Shinra. You're going around. It essentially, I was talking to Jill, and she made a good point. It kind of looks like a weird Final Fantasy PUBG knockoff. It could be cool, but it is kind of odd. It's a weird direction for Final Fantasy VII, and I guess Final Fantasy as a brand in general to do. And I'm sure, I know in the depths of my heart that this Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier will have microtransactions and stuff like that pushed. It's a mobile game, iOS and Android again. I'm sure that it will, because those first-person shooters, they really lend themselves to selling cosmetics and stuff like that very well. What worries me about that, though, is because they are releasing Ever Crisis, as well, are they going to butcher that experience with just a ton of microtransactions and garbage, too? Because it looks fun right now, but is it just going to be, butchered in a way or made worse by these practices? And if that is the case, right, if Square Enix starts making just a ton of money off these microtransactions, I always worry about things going the Konami route, where it's like, hey, listen, video games are nice, but we make more on pachinko, so no. That kind of thing, where it's like, I don't want Square Enix to become what I don't like about other companies, even including great companies now like Rockstar, where they'll release their single player GTA thing, but then it'll be like, oh, but wait, shark cards make us $1 billion. Why would I put more time into that single player? I feel like these microtransactions, as much as it's your money, you can buy whatever you want, and people shouldn't really shame you for your money. I think that they send the wrong message to developers. I get it's like, I want to buy a little sword here. I get that. Or, hey, I want to buy this little materia or this little hat. I get that. You drop $5, $10 total on a game that was maybe free to you, that you played on and off for months. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is that you doing that is not the same as what other people do. There are these things called whales in the video game industry who will come in and spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on these cosmetics and microtransactions and just fuel this practice over and over and over again. And there's enough of them that it affects the way that game development heads. So it's like, to me, let's say Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis and Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier are doing that. Well, now is there a risk of that entering the console versions of future games in the Final Fantasy VII Remake timeline? I don't know. Maybe there's not. Maybe they wouldn't do that, but it worries me as a huge fan of this series because I want all of these things to be good. I will play all of these things, by the way. Even The First Soldier, which, yes, again, looks kind of like a weird PUBG reskin with Final Fantasy. I want to play that. I'm interested in the world. I'm interested in the lore, what's going on. I'm into it, but just don't use these mobile games as a reason to butcher the others. If you really want to, use The First Soldier to make a few $1 million on microtransactions, and then you put some of that money back towards your console stuff and you keep working hard on single player experiences, cool. I'll look the other way on this. Like, it's whatever. I understand, you got to make money. You're a company. But I've always seen this go further and further. It never ends at, well, we made that money, let's put it towards this. It's always, we made that money, let's make more. And it's never a way to make more that's good for the consumer. So that really just worries me about these, about these mobile games. It just concerns me, and I hope that we don't see that really affecting the rest of the franchise going forward. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Are you excited for Final Fantasy VII Remake? Did you catch some of the stuff at the end? I saw Weiss in here. I always say his name wrong. I think it's Weiss. I don't think it's Weiss. From Final Fantasy VII, the original Dirge of Cerberus. I saw some Deep Ground soldiers here, so I'm wondering, what direction the timeline's going to go with the remake. That's very interesting to see. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Did you play the original? Did you play the remake? Anything else? What are your thoughts? Will you be playing the mobile games, and are you concerned that they will affect the future of the console games? Very interested. Please leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more content. I appreciate you as always. Have a fantastic day. Check out the links in the description, Patreon, thriving Discord, all the social medias, and also a secondary channel, Degenerate Plays, where we play through a wide variety of games together with all of my friends. Hope to see you there. Have a fantastic day. And as always, stay shway.